Cass, welcome today. So glad to have you here on the Great Retention. Excited to have you. Welcome.
John, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive in. But before we do, tell us a little bit about the business. FluentStream, give us an overview for the audience here.
Sure. FluentStream is a cloud communications provider for small and medium businesses in North America. We provide a great service, not only a business phone system, but we bundle that with contact center features for sales and support teams that are trying to provide the best service they can to the end customers. And we've actually been around since 2010, but really went into hyper-growth mode beginning in 2018 with some new unique partner programs we have in the marketplace to accelerate our growth.
Got it. And I'm super interested to hear about the growth, but specifically around how you've managed the culture with the growth. So why don't we start there? Tell us a little bit about the why behind FluentStream. Tell us a little bit about the culture. What makes as an employee, what makes it special? For me, overall with the culture. Let's start there if that's okay.
Sure. Well, I think one of the places I usually start is culture. To me, is not something I personally define as CEO, put on a paper, and then push top down. Culture is actually all the different actions and biases that each individual employee, or we call them streamers here, bring to the company. And that collective set of actions and choices, personalities, biases that we all bring and have actually is what creates the culture. And so that's how we think about what culture means to us. At FluentStream, we have a core set of values that we think helps guide the behaviors and the actions of FluentStream's employees, which again, we call streamers. And we have 5 core values. I won't go into each one of those, but what we do when each employee comes on board is we talk about not only driving results, because we're a high growth, performance driven organization, but how we get to those results, the behaviors and the actions that we have to actually complete the work required to drive those results matters just as much as the end results that we're trying to get to. And so that's what we talk about and kind of set a foundation. That in addition to inclusion, bringing our employees together, making them feel like, hey, they're appreciated, each of their values and comments matter, especially in a remote organization. Those are some of the things that we think shape our culture and help create really an intangible fabric that makes our employees keep coming back and stay with us and retain with us.
Yeah, no, that's I love streamers, by the way. That's awesome. And I know, we've talked about, so your team is fully remote, right?
Yes.
100% remote. So, but it wasn't always that way for FluentStream, right? And so it used to be, you had, the office in Denver, people bring in their dogs, right? And then you made this move, I think even before pandemic kind of forced people to go remote. You as a leadership organization team decided you were going remote. So maybe tell us a little bit about that. And how did you make that? So the why behind it, how did you make that transition? Any lessons learned, experiences, best practices that you can share when it comes to maintaining, that strong culture in that remote environment?
Sure. And tons of learnings, and we're still learning. I think that's one of the most fun parts right now of leading a business in this day and age, is that folks that have gone fully remote were really on the forefront of doing this, as a standard practice for the first time ever in society, I'd say. So for anybody that thinks they've got it mastered or nailed down is totally wrong. We're still all learning and figuring out how this is going to play long term. But for us, the decision was actually pretty easy, because in 2018, we pivoted the business strategy from really, I'd say, a regional or local provider of UCaaS, or Unified Communications as a Service, to the broader Colorado area, to really a national footprint. So we took on a national growth strategy where we were going to grow through partners and through acquisitions. And that led us to say, okay, hey, we don't have a workforce strategy that is well aligned to that growth strategy. And where the rubber hit the road was when we would do some acquisitions, we were having a tough time attracting those employees that we acquired or their families to come live in Denver, where our headquarters and our office was. So it was kind of an easy decision and obvious to say we have to better align our workforce strategy and support distributed employees with this growth strategy. Then COVID hit about 6 to 12 months later, and we said, okay, this is our silver lining to actually accelerate that shift to a fully distributed remote workforce. And we didn't know when the pandemic would be maybe approaching an end and folks would feel comfortable coming back into an office. So at that moment, we decided, hey, rather than trying to replicate a lot of what we've been doing in the office to attract and retain and make employees excited, which included kegs, dogs, no shoes at times, ping pong, all of those things. We said, okay, we've really got to relook at the drawing board and start with a blank slate of paper. And so what we did was with the leadership team is we sat down and we drafted a whole set of norms and just try to put on paper, visualizing the type of remote environment we wanted to create and also what we didn't want to create. Right? I think we've all seen some of the negative consequences of living inside of chat rooms or public forums like Twitter. There can be a lot of noise and unproductive behavior that comes as that. So a lot of our norms were designed to make sure it was a safe, inclusive environment in a fully digital landscape where most of our communications happening over Slack or messaging, and the minority of it's actually happening over video and voice. And so that was a really intentional shift that we had. And so far we've been refining those norms, trying to reinforce them. And we have every single employee that joins us really digest those, understand them, comprehend them before they get started in their actual day jobs and real work.
Yeah, no, it's really, really interesting. And I know, so, Cass, this is something that I hear, to your point, everyone who says they have it all figured out is, you gotta, definitely think twice on that. But, everyone's trying to figure out, how do they keep their people connected? What does their core values mean to that new person who's, weren't part of the no shoes, dogs, everything else. Right. And so your leadership team, you sat down and you wrote out, it sounds like, here's what we want a virtual first culture to be, and here's what we don't want it to be. Am I hearing you right on that?
Exactly right. So we called it our distributed workforce norms. It's a published, pretty but long document. And it talks about everything from large intentional things about, how we want to treat each other in a vague way, but also very down to tactical things like, hey, when is it okay to turn my video off? When is it not? When is it okay to do a voice call versus a video call? How should we communicate asynchronously, versus try and get on a live meeting every time we want to talk to somebody, right? Cass can just record himself on a video now and send that to the team. And maybe it doesn't have quite the same impact as a live meeting would, but it might take an extra 2 weeks to get all the schedules aligned to have a live meeting. And so that small video clip might be more effective than actually a text communication in that particular environment. So little things like that we got very intentional on, and we're still learning, and then we try and update that document and reincorporate it back in and always make that better. Yeah, no, that's really interesting, and I think it's something that really could be applicable to to almost any organization this day and age. So it sounds like this is also part of your onboarding process. So new hires are understanding these norms and they're walking through this. Is that right? 100%. And actually that's been a lot easier than trying to teach or have, put differently, our employees that were used to having an office and those kegs in that environment. Say, okay, now relearn this whole way we want to work and support a remote culture. That was actually a lot harder than kind of teaching this to a new remote employee joining us. Interesting. Yeah. I love how you are intentional about saying, hey, let's take a step back. Let's really define what we believe and what we want this to be. I think that's a great lesson learned for leaders who are taking away notes from this call. So thank you. So I want to kind of transition into somewhat of a buzzword, but it's something that I know a lot of leaders are dealing with. And it's the Great Resignation, right? So employees leaving the company for a variety of different reasons. Maybe that changes a little bit with some of the economic conditions, but I think it's always true you want to be able to, attract and retain great people, right? And so tell us, what have you experienced with the Great Resignation? Has this had any impact on FluentStream? Is there anything that you guys have done to kind of navigate that? Any lessons learned that you can share on that as well? Pay more, recognize often.
Okay, keep it simple.
Joke,
I
but
like
it's
it.
half true. Yeah, it really is. No, we're definitely not immune to it. It's been something that's, I'd say I think we've weathered relatively well versus peers and competitors and other growth companies at our stage. But we're seeing situations where, maybe we hired an employee and then within a year of their employment, they're getting an offer that they can't refuse. And that's in some ways we view as almost desperation by other employers, to have to try and fight this great resignation with increased pay or benefits, and that can lead to offers to our employees that are superior to what we can match or afford. But the best way we've tried to navigate this whole landscape and what I call a more challenging labor environment for us is really focus on the benefits of what FluentStream has that's unique to other companies. For example, number one, we are in hyper growth mode. A lot of companies don't have the excitement that comes with being with a hyper growth company and such focus and relentless pursuit of that growth. And in fact, that's something that bonds a lot of the streamers that we have. And so, sure, you could go to a public company that's more of a flat grower and maybe make a lot more with, especially with stock options, or at least a few months ago with stock options.
Right.
And we probably can't compete against that. But on the flip side, if you really want to be at a hyper growth company that, we're on this run from, call it 10 million to 100 million of ARR, we think that's a really fun journey. And that attracts a certain type of individuals, employees that want to be part of that. Not just a number on a larger company that's more predictable and potentially a higher economic benefits. That being said, we're always looking at our economic packages and making sure that we're competitive. And that means, being willing to not just have annual cycles of looking at compensation, but looking at it more often. So we really think of, and then some other things, John, that help us attract employees and retain them are what I call that intangible fabric that I mentioned earlier around, what does this organization feel like? How are they going to treat me? Do they care about my opinions? Do I know the CEO? Do I have a relationship with them? Do I have a relationship with the other employees that I can't see or meet in person? Those are really important things. And of course, the flexibility that comes with a 100% remote work environment, that seems to be a big selling point. And so certainly we have maybe some additional turnover that we wouldn't have seen without the great resignation. We're also attracting maybe more candidates that we otherwise wouldn't have, or that don't want to go back to an in-office or hybrid environment. They've gotten used to the remote work environment. They feel successful and productive there. And so they want to join a company like ours that has that flexibility.
I like it. You said something there, people that want to be part of that hyper growth journey, right? And the excitement, the bonding, the community that comes along with that. And I think, it may not be for everyone. And I think that may be okay, right? It's, hey, this is who we are. This is what it means to be a streamer. And you're going to attract, folks who are going to gravitate to that. So that makes sense to me. I like it. That's great. And, Cass, I really appreciate you, sharing with us your insights, just the remote first kind of environment, how you've navigated that. And as we wrap up, we've got leaders, they're listening in because they want to be able to apply, things that have worked for other organizations, to perhaps to their teams, right? And who they might be navigating and trying to figure out these norms, right? And how to be competitive when it comes to, higher salaries that bigger companies are offering. So any practical pieces of advice that you can share, or any kind of final, lessons learned that you can share as we wrap up here today?
Sure. I think the first one is I think any flavor of a work environment can work. So I hear a lot of biases. Sometimes it's like, oh, that, remote's not here to stay. Well, I think we're living proof that remote can work and be successful. And there's other organizations that are showing that that's true as well. And so just being intentional and thoughtful about it is what's important most. And thinking through the different scenarios and how you have to change the business to support that is what's most important. But if you want to be hybrid, fully in person or fully remote, I think all three can be successful in this day and age. And as we go forward, past the pandemic days, hopefully soon. And the second thing I'd say is that if you're going through a transition from one of those places to another place, so you're in person, you're going to fully remote or hybrid, it takes active management, coaching, and preparation of your managers most importantly, your people managers to get there, and to let them know that, hey, it's okay to try for so long to get that employee to adopt the new practices and norms you want to have, whether that's in that, a lot of cases, that's accountability for work, not seeing somebody next to you. And so those things can happen, but you have to actively coach and prepare the managers, and really give them the autonomy and empowerment to make tough decisions. If an employee is not going to be able to turn the corner and needs more of that in-person environment to be successful.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Really focusing on the managers. That's great. Cass, I really appreciate you sharing with us just these insights and what it means to be a streamer as part of FluentStream. So thank you. And just really appreciate, again, all of the lessons learned and best practices here.
Hey, John, thanks so much for having me. This was fun. Appreciate it.